So I put together a program, and I am by no means I don't consider myself an expert necessarily. I've had some experiences with the Vanity and some things I can share with you if you're interested in that. But the program I put together, and I'll go ahead and pull these objectives up here and let you read those. I'm not going to kill you with PowerPoint. What got me to thinking about putting this program together is talking to hams, new and old alike, and I mean old as in been in the hobby for a few years. I've discovered that the changes that have happened over the years with the U.S. amateur radio call sign system, not everybody's really familiar with them per se. Of some odd configured call signs, like can I apply for that as a Vanity? And I'm like, well, no, that doesn't match up to the way things work. But a benefit of knowing how the call sign systems work, not only the U.S. call sign system, but just around the world is, if you're going to move to HF and work DX and things like that, it's good to be familiar with that. So that way you kind of have an idea of who you're talking to and what you're looking for. But one of the best ways is to learn our own system here at home first. There's some neat little things about the call sign system I think a lot of people didn't realize. There's things that come up over the years that I didn't realize. I'm sure all of them are real call signs that may belong to somebody. Some of them are people we know. There's a few that I just had to make up. But yeah, if you see those call signs, if your call sign personally appears on there, please don't get offended. I just made a good example out of you. And if you're like me, it's a rare occasion. But we'll talk about how the call signs are formatted for each license class. And as some of you new folks may not know yet, you can get various call sign formats based on your license class that indicate, especially when you get up to extra, there's formats that when you see that call sign, that person's an extra class operator. There's also geographically restricted call signs. And this is one of the questions I've had people ask me when they ask about the Vanity system. Like, can I get thus and so call sign? And I'm like, well, no, you don't live in Hawaii or Puerto Rico or wherever. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then I'm going to talk to you about the Vanity call sign process. If any of you are ever interested in that, most of this comes through personal experience of do's and don'ts and how to be successful in applying for a Vanity call, especially if you get to extra class and you want to get one of those short calls. And then we'll touch on the special event call sign system too. Special event call signs aren't necessarily, it's not going to be that you're just going to hear those on HF. We actually had a special event several years ago here in Bristol, Ben and some folks operated on a local repeater under a special event call sign. And if you were new to the hobby at that time and you hear W4B, you're thinking, well, that don't sound like a real call sign. I've never heard that before. But it is, but it's only temporary. Under U.S. 47 Code of Federal Regulations 97.19, a unique call sign is assigned to each amateur station during the process of its license application. What that means in English is when you folks, when you get done and you pass that test, you're going to get a call sign from the FCC that has never belonged to anybody else through the FCC ever. And you can, I don't want to call it a career, we don't get paid. Some folks in this room have had their call sign through all license classes. You can do that, but that call sign that you get to begin with is unique. It's also sequential. And what that means, I know each of you are taking the test for the first time, is that right, on the front row? I'm narrating a little bit because I'm going over to people that don't see. And anybody else here. So when your call sign gets spit out by the FCC, alphabetically, you all should be in order. And let's get another one in somewhere. I think maybe that there was a break between you and somebody you sat beside because there might have been another test session mailed in. But typically, your call signs are going to come out in order. My first call sign was KD4ODW. The boy that sat beside me in the testing was KD4ODV. And there may have been actually up with him over the years and talked to his dad and stuff, so I knew that. Um, the station is reassigned its same call sign upon renewal or modification of its license. So in English, 10 years from now, you take and pass the technician test, you don't do anything else, but you want to renew your license in 10 years. You don't get your call sign changed unless you check the box or if you do it online saying that you want a new, you're going to get a new call sign within your license class. So you get to keep that call sign as long as you keep renewing that license. We have a new system that's, I say new, it's not that new anymore. It's almost 20 years old or older, but I call it new. A system in place called the Vanity call sign system. It gives you the opportunity to request a specific call sign. And I know a lot of this stuff I'm talking to people. I'm also talking from the perspective of talking to brand new people as well. Gives you the opportunity to request a specific call sign from for your primary station, club. You do have to request a call sign that formats according to call signs in the United States. All right. As we discussed, call signs, we'll start with Class D and work our way backwards through the classes. Class A, extra. If you're an extra class, you're eligible for any format of call signs. Call sign that just seeing you're an extra class, you're definitely eligible. If you want a 2x2 that used to be formatted for the advanced system, that kind of thing, you're definitely eligible for that as well. Some classes may be eligible for call signs using the Vanity system, but we're assigned a longer call sign upon being licensed. So today you'll get a 2x3 call sign. You could actually, through the Vanity system, apply for a 1x3 call sign. We'll talk about that. You will not be. They don't give out new call signs like the 2x1s and the 1x2s and stuff because they've all been given out pretty much. So that's why pretty much anybody coming in, general or technician, is going to get the longer call signs assigned to them. Some call sign prefixes are restricted by location, and we'll discuss that after we discuss just the general call signs. The regions that we'll look at will be numbered 1 through 10. Although your call signs are numbered 0 through 9, the region breakdown as far as FCC is concerned is 1 through 10. And advanced and novice class licenses can be renewed under grandfather rules, but they are no longer issued. So if you're new to the hobby here tonight, you've probably been told and you've studied that there's technician, general, and extra, and that's it. Once upon a time, we had a couple other classes in there called novice and advanced. They no longer issue those class licenses, but if you own one, you can keep it as long as you renew it. I actually worked with somebody, and I looked that call sign up the other day when I was putting this program together, that lives here in Bristol, is not an active operator, but she keeps the license plate on her car, and she still has a novice class license. And it was one of the 2x3 call signs or what have you. So there's probably still some out there. I can't imagine. No, it was after that. It was like I want to say a KA call. Yeah, so it was after that change came along as well. Excuse me. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah, the WD, and then wasn't there like a WN that you could do? Which you start? Yeah, and then they would just change the one letter. So here's an example of the regions and so forth. And I'm not going to read every single one of these, but those of you watching the video, you can see them on the screen probably a little better than the ones in here tonight. But like I said, there's no 10 call signs as far as like KN10 or something. There's a 0, so that's kind of could be a point of confusion, I guess. But if you look over here on this section, it'll show you how that corresponds. So basically, the 10s are 0s. Everything else to what region. So what call sign that you all will receive tonight will have a 4 in it because you. Get for a kinetic call sign, you would get something one call sign. I'm not sure where they're at. It's K something one, I'm sure. So Group D is novice class license, club, military, recreation stations. Those call signs have a 2-letter prefix with the first letter being K or W, and then 3-letter suffix. That's pretty much will be the kind of call sign completion tonight. So they would go like KA4XYZ or WN4XYZ, that kind of thing. You'll be issued a K. What are we up to now? KO. You'll get a KO4 call is where we're at. Basically, it just follows the alphabet. It'll skip a letter or two here and there for sometimes obvious reasons. Some of these formats apply to restricted call signs. When calls for a particular class run out, the FCC will drop back to the previous class and begin issuing call signs. And that's basically what's going on now. They've dropped back to the class call signs, and that's what they're doing now. Group C is general technician. Our Group D call sign because they're out of Group C's. But and one point of note here real quick too, after the code requirement was dropped, Tech Plus no longer exists. I actually heard a QSO on the radio the other day. A couple guys were on Simplex and they were like, as to why they don't see any more Tech Pluses out there. They're like, I just don't. Well, why doesn't anybody have a Tech Plus license anymore? Well, you don't need it because you don't. With the code requirement gone, it's just technician. So if you were a Tech Plus when they dropped the code requirement altogether, then you just became a technician. If you were a technician, you gained privileges when they dropped the code requirement. Homer, I guess the technicians were the no-code guys back in those days, and the Tech Plus were the ones that had codes. But they typically called us, and Ben and I came in under that system, and I'd say Dallas did too. We came in without doing the code to begin with. We were technicians, but they always called us no codes, and they called the Tech Pluses just technicians. Or Tech Light, yeah, at least in the circle that I ran in. If you had a technician license before March 21st, 1987, when this change was made, you were eligible to upgrade to general just by submitting proof to a licensed VE. If we still had call signs of when you tested here tonight and you got a technician license, you would get a 1x3 call, but they're all soaked up. So you'll get the 2x3, but you could go back under the Vanity system and find one that you like, and a lot of folks did that. I know we all use Ben as KD4 EDI when he got his license. The Vanity call sign system came along and he dropped the D and became K4 EDI before he got the call sign that he has now. So you can go back and get one and reclaim one. Your new call sign that you'll get tonight will be in the Group D format. Well, I have some examples up here of those formatted call signs. Like this one right here, I know folks in the room know K4PAP and W4FXO. That's basically what they did. They dropped a letter under the Vanity. However, Harry, that was a original issue call. He got his. Did you do that under? I guess you went novice to tech, and that's how that went. Or did you get or did you go to general?
I went from tech to general.
Okay. But when he made the changes, these call signs were still available, and that's what they were handing out. Now, eventually, and I'm talking about this N4 KZS, eventually, that as new folks came along, that K for the new folks became a Z, and then eventually the alphabet ran out, and so did the call signs, so they quit issuing those. Some restricted call signs with 2-letter suffixes are still being issued, and we'll talk about that a little bit too later. Group V was the advanced class call signs. These were 2x2 call signs. Now, they also do 2x2s for extras, but the uniqueness of the advanced class, if you are still have an advanced class license and you want to go apply for a Vanity call, you could get a KN or W with 2 letters in your suffix, and those call signs would show that you're an advanced class operator. Like KT4SQ, here's some examples, WD4JJ, that kind of thing. Now, if you're an extra, you can still get these as well. Thoroughly confused yet? Okay. Again, a little uniqueness with the restricted call signs, and I'll talk about that here in a little while. So just kind of keep that in mind when we get to it, because this actually kind of confused me when we had a guy move to our area that had a restricted call sign, and he had a 2x2, and we were talking. I found out he was a general, and I'm like, wait a minute, general can't get 2x2 call signs. Well, and I'll tell you about it later on, how he got a 2x2 call sign. And then Group A is extra class. Still eligible for the KN or the W, two-letter suffix, that kind of thing. As far as the prefix would be KN or W, and then two-letter suffix. And here's some examples of call signs. There's mine in the middle there. Some call signs that we know you can get these style call signs. These are exclusively reserved for extra class. Now, just because someone has a 2x3 call sign, they could still be an extra class operator and just retain their old call sign, or any other format for that matter. Some folks, and if you read the study books, depending on which one you read, Gordon West has like a WB4 call with 3 letters, or WB4, WB6, that kind of thing. When I was studying for my license, I read the Gordon West books, and he just said that in his book that when he got his extra class, that he had been that call sign for so long, it was a part of his identity, and he just wanted to keep it. I kind of felt the same way about my original call for many years, but eventually I switched over a couple times. You're eligible for a 2-letter prefix with the first letter being A, N, K, or W, and 1-letter suffix. So here's some examples of those call signs. Ben back here is KT40. We have AB3I in our club. A couple other people that I know. This is a local guy right here, this WD4D. I think that was a pretty neat play on the call sign. Check out his QRZ page. He even kind of addresses that, how he picked that call sign. Here's something that I found a lot of even older hams maybe didn't know or realize. The 2-letter prefix that the first letter is A is an indication of extra class call. So if you have an advanced class license, one of the old advanced class licenses, you're eligible for a 2x2, but you cannot start it with the letter A unless you're an extra. If you were to sit here tonight and you were to test all the way through to extra, you would get a call sign that began with the letter A, and it would be a prefix, another letter, and then 2 letters. Those are still available, and they're still out there. This is my old call sign before I switched to N4NT. I was AD4FF. I used to be a volunteer firefighter, so my initials are AD, and then the 4 is the geographical area, and the FF for firefighter. So you can kind of personalize your call signs a little bit. Restricted call signs only allow 1-letter suffix, and we'll look. So here's the restricted call signs that I'm talking about. The United States outlying areas, that kind of thing, Alaska, Hawaii, they're still under the jurisdiction of the FCC. So the FCC has deemed that some of these call signs can only be issued to these folks in certain areas. The numbers, if you look here, like Hawaii, except for however you pronounce that island right there, we'll have a number 6 or number 7, and then that funny sounding name island will have a 7 followed by a K. I'm not going to go through every single one of these because it would put some of you to sleep or whatever, and it would me too. But this information is available on the FCC website, so I would encourage you as a new ham, especially if you're looking to get into HF, look up the geographically restricted call signs and kind of be familiar with that, because that'll help you. The cool thing about this is, okay, these are like U.S. territories, right? And they're under the of the FCC. However, when you get into HF and you start working DX, all these count as DX. Alaska, Hawaii, all these little islands, and in awards like DX, you got to have 100 confirmed contacts. Well, right there, and all these are sometimes they're like shooting fish out of a barrel because they're just right off the coast of our count. Yeah, Ben brought up a good. Yeah. All right, so let's get into the meat of it. And again, I'm not going to go through every territory and all that. I'm just trying to give you an example. If you decide, hey, I'm an extra class now and I want a vanity call sign, so I want, my name's Al and I want AL. Not going to happen. That belongs to Alaska. KL, NL, WL, all belong to Alaska. The Caribbean islands, KP, NP, like Puerto Rico, WP, those are restricted. So what's going to happen is we're at KO now. We're going to have to skip KP and go to the next letter on as far as us over here on the Big Island. Hawaii and Pacific Islands areas, AH, KH, NH, WH. Anytime you hear those prefixes, you know that should be where it's coming from. Now here, I'll use this as an example though. Let me pop this next slide because it's hard to read. I'm sorry. Here's the kicker. Let's say I go and get my license in Hawaii and I'm a resident of Hawaii. You know, I go there for whatever reason. I get rich and win the lottery and I finally move to Hawaii and I just stay for a while. Well, then I get homesick and decide I want to come back to Bristol. If I got my license in Hawaii and I got a KH call, when I move back to Bristol, nothing says I got to change it. If you get on the 6-7 and you think you're going to work Alaska, because we got a guy and he's not there anymore. So this right here is a website, and the folks watching Facebook probably could see this better than you in here, but that was the one I told you to go and visit. All you got to do is Google FCC restricted call signs and it'll pull it up. They have restrictions as well. License class restricted to prefix for region 1 through 10. It may be different from 11 through 13. I'll give you an example. I told you earlier that 2x2 calls are restricted to advanced and extra class operators for the most part. Here on the Big Island it is. However, and he moved, you know, when he got that license, he was in Alaska. He got that really cool call sign. It was issued sequentially, that kind of thing, and he gets to keep. I looked him up one day, and we had this discussion. So I'm not saying anything about him. You know, I'm not like whispering behind his back or anything. But I got to look, and he's a general class operator. And everything I thought I knew about call signs, I just kind of got the wind knocked out of me because I was like, wait a minute, that ain't right. I thought you had to be at least advanced to get that. Well, in that particular issue, that particular style call sign for those licenses. All right, vanity call signs. This is something I've been up one side and down the other when it comes to applying for vanity calls. If you want one of these short call signs like I have, N4NT, or Ben has KT40, that kind of thing, you cannot be very picky. I guarantee you that, especially in the 4-call area. Yeah, Ken knows what I'm talking about. Before I got N4NT, I probably filled out a good 20 or 30 vanity call sign applications. I watched websites and I waited for stuff to become available, and I wasn't very picky. There were a couple I skipped over and didn't apply for, but not very many. So if you're an extra class operator, you're eligible for any available call sign out there, as long as it's legally formatted. The call does not have to be issued either. There are some call signs out there. Now these 1x2s and 2x1s, most of those were issued. When the vanity system started, there were some, and I didn't know this until I talked to a friend, like K1 calls, those short calls that actually hadn't been issued. If it's never been issued, you can go back and apply. You can go ahead and apply for it. We've got a fellow here locally who has a T call because it fit the vanity of what he wanted, you know, his RSQ for rescue and that kind of thing. Up to the KTs yet. And I've got him up here as an example. Some of the 2x2 calls, like I know Jim's call, WD4JJ, that call had never been issued. They didn't get into that issuing those 2x2s for advanced class operators, that kind of thing. So he was able to go to apply for that call because it fit the format for what he was eligible for, but nobody had ever had it. For the most part, though, if you're going for a vanity call, especially if you want a short extra class call, you're going to get a recycled call sign. Previously issued calls are available 2 years and 1 day after the date of expiration. If you get on the FCC website and you see that really cool call that you want and it expires on March the 5th and you apply for that call sign tonight, you're not going to get that call sign. You applied a day early. Doesn't matter what class of call, because if you're wanting like let's say you get KO4XYZ and you want to drop the O and that call's available, you're probably going to get it if that call's available. There's probably not much competition for those. But the short calls, there's competition. So if you apply ahead of time, then your application is going to get tossed. There is an exception, though. If you are a former holder of that particular call sign and it's within the 2-year grace period, then you apply for it. You can apply under the former holder provision, and they will give you that call back. If you're the former holder and it's past the 2-year grace period and it has not been reissued, then if there's competition that comes in for that call, then you will win the competition based on being a former holder. If you're a relative of your great-great-uncle was a ham, and his call is available, and or coming available in particular is where this really comes into play. Day that it's eligible, apply. Actually, you don't have to wait till eligibility. You can apply for that call as a relative of a deceased former. One of the things that happens with these call signs, and this is going to blow your mind, some of these short call signs sometimes, and people will look these call signs up after they expire, and they'll look these people up and they'll figure out that they're deceased. And they actually go on the Social Security Administration's website and pull up some type of proof that this person, like death certificate or whatever, and they will send it to the FCC and have these call signs canceled. Or if it's still a valid call sign that hasn't expired and they know the person's deceased, people who are not relatives or anything else just trying to get these call signs will have these things canceled, and then when the period expires, they'll jump in and apply for them and try to get them. That mostly happens with the short calls, the 2x1s and the 1x2s, because there's such a competition to get those calls. If I know these slides are hard to see, I'll rethink my color scheme on the next program I ever do. This AE7Q.com is a good resource to determine what calls are available. You can go on there and he'll have, and I'll actually show you an example here in a minute, but he'll have, like, you can click on the for call area and the type of call you want, and it'll show stuff that's getting ready to expire, stuff that's already expired, stuff. If you don't apply the day that it becomes available, that's another thing too. Let's say call sign becomes available 2 years and 1 day is March the 5th. You wait till March the 6th to apply for the call. You're going to get bumped because somebody applied for that thing on March the 5th. That doesn't necessarily happen with longer calls, but with these short calls, you gotta be a sniper. You gotta sit there and when the time comes. However, I will say this: it does not benefit you one bit to sit there at 1 minute after midnight and put your application in. It doesn't help you, doesn't hurt you. Any time in that 24-hour period that you apply for that call sign, let's say I apply for the call and Gary applies for the call and Dallas and Tom and everybody in this room applies for that same call on that same day. But I applied a minute after midnight and the last person applied a minute before. We all have an equal chance of getting that call. That's basically the way they do it. They put them in a stack and they draw one out. And that's pretty much it. There's no, you've been a ham longer, you've been a ham, none of that. It's a drawing, which is why I'm floored as to how I got in for NT, because 35 people applied for that call. I lost calls that I didn't get calls that I applied for that 6 other people applied for, but the one that I applied up against 35 people, I won, I guess, for lack of a better word. Can you imagine that? Never been lucky at anything in my life other than so, yeah. This program, I'm sorry. Oh, I thought somebody was saying. This program applies to individuals. There are exceptions for clubs. They'll give you preference on some calls. W4UD is our club call. Under the club provision. All right, so this is an example of that AE7Q.com, what it looks like on the website. So you go on here and it tells you all the 1x2 and 2x1 call signs that are either available or coming available in a particular call area. It doesn't just list all the call signs. If they're active and not expired, then they're not going to be on here. But if they expire, that kind of thing, they'll be on here. The red ones are canceled, not yet available, but it shows is active but has not been renewed. And green is the call sign is available. Again, don't get your hopes up. If you get on this website and you see this call sign right here in green and think, oh man, but it's days after it was available, and think, oh man, I'm going to apply for that call. I guarantee you, if it's one of those short calls, about 20 people have already applied for it on the day it was available to be applied for, and they're going to get it over you if you're a day late and $1 short. However, if it's the day of that it's available and it's 5 minutes before midnight, you can apply and have an equal chance. It will stay green on the website till it is issued, showing that it's available. But that kind of gets your hopes up and tricks you a little bit on these short calls. Application process, there's a few things. Again, I'm willing to help anybody. If you're interested in the Vanity call, had success, and I'll be glad to help you. I'll be glad to give you the tips and the tricks. If you apply prior to years, one day it's going to be dismissed. I guarantee it. No matter what call, if you apply for the worst call out there, and I'm not going to make one up because it'll probably be somebody's real call, and they'll call me up and be like, "Hey, dude, really?" But I was going to say like KZ4ZZ, but somebody probably got it. If you are applying for a 1x2 or 2x1 short in the 4 call, specifically probably any call area for that matter, after the availability date, if you apply after that, I promise you won't get the call sign. And what I mean is, and again, I said it once before, but if it's available to be applied for on March the 5th and you wait till March the 6th and it's a short call, you're probably not going to get it. I about guarantee it. Other call signs, that's the case. A lot of them just kind of linger out there. If you wanted my old call sign, KD4ODW, I guarantee you it's been available for almost 20 years now, and you probably could apply for it tonight and get it. I hope if my son ever gets his license, and he seems somewhat interested, maybe he'll look for me, because I'm still fond of it. I just, like I said, I wanted the extra call. The application has a preference list for the calls you want in the order you prefer them. Here's a little trick though. Don't fill out multiple calls or applications for the same call, because what's going to happen is one will go into the drawing, the rest will get done. However, if, let's say, N4NT, and this I actually did it this way, and KT40, I'm just using examples I can remember, N4NT, KT40, WD4JJ, W4JH, all become available on the same day. I fill out one application, I put N4NT, KT40, and W4JH as my preferences. What's going to happen is I'm going to be I would do is fill out one application for each call and put your preferences number 1, and each one of those will go into the separate stacks, and you'll have a better chance of getting at least one of those calls, even if one of those calls down the list is not your preference, especially if you're going for these short calls. Can't be too picky anyway. Yeah. And in fact, the day I applied for N4NT, there was a couple others available. Now, what you're issued that call, the one call on the like your number 1 call or whatever, you're issued one call, you're not going to win the second drawing, because they're going to see that you've already got a call on that day, and they're not going to change your call sign twice in one day and like screw up a bunch of other. The trick to it is only one application for every call, but fill out one application for every call. Multiple applications for the same call on the same day will. The short call application process is competitive. Same call. However, it only matters when you apply, and I've already said that, and not what time of day. So you don't have to stay up application in at midnight. you must hold the license class that is eligible for a given call on the day you apply. So you think, okay, I've really got all the extra class on March the 5th, and I'm going to pass it. But this call is available on March the 4th. If you apply on March the 4th, it's tossed, even if you pass on March the 5th. And I've already said this, but short calls have become available on the same day. Fill out. As of September the 8th, 2015, there is no fee to apply for a vanity call. They've got rid of the fee. You don't have to pay fees to renew your license or anything. Go on to the FCC website. You get your FR kind of thing, and you can do all your transactions with the FCC for free. I will mention, and just to the benefit of those of you that are here new tonight, they no longer automatically send you a copy of your license. You actually have to go in and request that, but you can go in and do that. You can print off a reference copy right off the bat, or if you want an official copy, they'll send you like a PDF and it'll say official copy in the background. But we no longer get the really cool licenses like we used to with the gold background and all that. Oh man, I miss it. That was the days. So what happens after you apply? The FCC takes 18 or more days to process the applications. I don't know if they accept mail-in applications anymore or how that system works. I was looking for that information. It used to be that if it was postmarked, they do anymore, but they still take 18 days. They want to make sure before they give this person vanity, chances are, especially those call signs, you're getting a recycled call sign. If there's competition for the call sign, I think I've covered this already, but I'll just go over it again. Short calls are pretty much guaranteed to have competition. The FCC will randomly draw from the applications filed on the earliest eligible date, and the winner receives the call sign, and all others are canceled. So if you fill out a vanity call sign application and you don't get anything that you put on the list, then you're gonna retain your call sign, and they're just gonna cancel it. Do not is your renewal. If you have a vanity application and you're up for renewal, you're going to have to renew separately. Once you're issued a vanity call sign, they will bump your date up. So let's say you guys get licensed tonight, and you turn around 2 days from now, you get your call sign, and you apply for a vanity call, and 18 days later you get your vanity call, then you're going to your 10 years is going to move up 20 days or so. Your renewal date. If you get a new call sign, it'll be good for 10 years from that date. And I said that already. Do not file your along with your application. If your renewal is going to file in that period, go ahead and do your renewal. It's not going to kill your vanity application or anything like that. Make sure you renew it because you do have a 2-year grace period. However, you cannot operate legally within that 2-year grace period. You've got to renew. And no reason not to renew because it's free. QRZ, the third-party sign for date. I've got a trick to help you with that if you're interested. If you're like me, when I changed over from AD4FF to N4NT, I was super for the most part. But I mean, had just got back into HF, so I was like on the radio constantly making contacts on FT8. Well, what would happen those 2 or 3 days that it takes? QRZ is not the official thing, FCC is. But in those 2 or 3 days that it took for QRZ to update, I was noticing people were like, my call sign just didn't show anybody, the old owner or whatever. So what I did was I went in here to the QRZ page, and under alias right here, which I know the folks on Facebook, you can't see it. Right here where it says WB4 or DKI, previous call sign. All right, right here where it says add, I typed in under AD4FF, which was my previous call sign, I typed in N4, and I put a comment like, new call sign waiting for system data. And I entered that information. So what would happen was every time somebody who had software or they got on QRZ or whatever and they typed in N4NT, it would automatically reference over to me at AD4FF, and I put in the description, hey, I've got a new call sign I'm waiting on the system to update, and it didn't cause mass confusion and people calling me the previous call sign owner's name or any of that kind of stuff. It actually referenced, because most people out there, if you got login programs and stuff and you're tied in, most people reference over to QRZ, like NetLogger does. Even on NetLogger, I type in N4NT, and it would leave N4NT in the call box, but reference AD4FF's information for that 2 or 3 days that I had to wait on QRZ to. That's just a neat little trick. That probably won't make a whole lot of sense, but those of you that are working HF and using login, and people logging you and that kind of thing, if you decide to change call sign and you're like running at it like, if you do that, that'll save you a lot of grief. Eventually what will happen is QRZ will update and you'll just be on your original call, and then your alias will be your old call. Signs, we're in the home stretch here. They're issued temporarily in conjunction with an event of special significance. They're used to help gain on the air while operating. And special event stations operators are required to transmit their own call sign at least once per hour during the event. A block of 750 signs are available. And here's the format. So basically it's a 1-by-1 call sign. You can get it with single letter. It has to be, there are special coordinators out there for these special event call stations, call signs you have to go through, like W5Y, VEC does it. You can get that information from the FCC website. Back in July the 1st, 2006, we had a sesquicentennial, say that real slow, celebration in Virginia. That means we turned 100 years old. The city did, not me. I feel like it sometimes, though. And we set up a special event station. And so we used the, I say we, I wasn't there, Ben was there, though, W4B, W4 like for Bristol. And they operated, did y'all operate HF, Ben, or just the 2 meter? Had a HF station, 2 meter, that kind of thing. Special event doesn't necessarily mean like a physical site. We could have an event, and we could actually designate multiple operators from their own homes that are in our club to use this one call sign and operate. There's a really cool one that comes along every year for around the 4th of July, where they do the 13 colonies. And they do special event call signs, and I'm trying to remember, it's one calls, I think is what they use, but there's like, and it goes in order of when they were colonized and that kind of thing, and you can work the original 13 colonies, plus there's a special event, one out of Pennsylvania, and they always set one up in England, and it's pretty neat. And what that does, those special call signs kind of draw attention to these people. When you see that pop up, it kind of sticks out. It's like, oh, that's a odd call sign. One of these days I'd like to put together a special event for us here. Again, just some type of Bristol Club special event. The general idea I have is just to work as many Bristols as possible and do some type of contest. But we could actually set folks up in the club operating, say, using W4B. And that would draw attention to us as our Bristol. And Connecticut would be, what are they, 0 or 1? 1. Yeah, something like that. Their club, or one of the clubs up there. And the UK, theirs would be totally different. But that's all I have on the call sign system. Again, I am not the world's foremost expert or anything. I think I've somewhat become one on the Vanity system, trials and tribulations. But does anybody have any questions, anything before I? Yeah. Okay, so Tom was asking, just for the benefit of them, if somebody already has a good call, what possesses them to want another call? I don't know if I'm really qualified per se to answer that. You're talking about somebody goes from one 1-by-2 call to, oh, okay, yeah. Yeah. Ken, I'm gonna get up here where everybody can hear you, though. All right, yeah, answer that.
I'm going to answer it for you, Tom, and my answer is I come from Michigan, and I wanted a 4 call because I live in Tennessee, not Michigan. When I worked the Tennessee QSO party, I had stations. Are you really in Tennessee? I said, yeah. Check. Go to QRZ and find out. I got tired of it, so I applied for a 4-call.
Yeah, so you're K4 HQ now, and you were what, N8FF?
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a good call. And there's people, you can apply for, you could apply for Tennessee. And when you get into HF, especially some of the old school calls coming from the 4-call area, so I know which way to swing my beam, where that guy's coming from. But you can't depend on that anymore because, and people will do this, especially wanting those short calls. There's people that in this area that I know that applied for 1-call area calls because they couldn't get a 4-call with a short call. And one guy in particular, I know, he's becoming a CW enthusiast, even though it's not required. So kudos to him for doing that. He's really invested in it and everything. But he wanted a short, quick call. He had to go with a 1-call. Yes. As far as changing your call, actually, what happens, you're going to get the next sequential call sign. So,
Actually, they are doing 2x2 calls for extras.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like Dennis Mott, he got K'd up before AG.
Yeah.
Those used to be kind of allocated to advanced, but since there is no advanced class, they have to
Yeah.
give them a 2-box for that sequential call.
Yeah, he's bringing up a good point. Let's say you're already a licensed technician or general, and you're going for extra, and you just want an extra class call sign, a 2x2. Yeah, you mark on your application when you take your test, and I'm just repeating this for the video, but mark on your application when you take the test to give me the next available sequential call sign, and yeah, you'll get a shorter call sign going to extra. Now, if you're going, and I know a guy that did this one time, and he did it on purpose and kind of laughed about it, but if you go from technician to general and you mark that, and let's say you got KO4 or ABC tonight, and a year later you take the general and you mark change my call sign, you'll get KO4 XYZ, something somewhere in between there. But yeah, if you go from general technician to extra and you mark to change your call sign, you'll get a 2x2. Any other questions or comments or anything? Okay, well, it looks like the Facebook video survived, so those listening, I'm hunting for the link, and I'm going to sign out, and this video will be available here on this Facebook page in the future, and I'm going to make a attempt to download it and put it over onto YouTube. So thanks for your kind attention and listening tonight.